Good.
Okay. We've asked a handful of people to share a little bit about their personal identities and what they relate in terms of trauma in their lives, whether it be family or themselves, what they've gone through. So, listen in.
My identity.
Our identity.
My identity.
My identity.
My identity.
I identify most with my
Nigerian.
Italian, I guess.
Korean.
Chinese.
Mexican. African. Growing up with. I've grown up in America.
Hello, my name is Linda, and I'm going to be talking about my identity as a Chinese American growing up in American culture. And growing up in the States, it kind of gave me a little bit of an identity crisis because I wasn't able to fully engage myself with Chinese culture and also grow from it. I actually came to find my identity later when I realized that I needed to act like as a bridge between Chinese culture and American culture, and especially when my family, uncles and aunts emphasized that I needed to become a bridge and that China needed to send more of people like me to the States to grow up in the States and act and provide more bridges for the growth of China. And I think this was because of the lack of expression that comes out of China and its government, and how in order for the people to grow, they need to have more of these so-called bridges that help and aid with the growth of Chinese culture with the rest of the world.
So we are all identified as Chinese here.
Our identity comes from both our culture and our heritage. So our ethnicity and our nationality are one and the same, both Chinese.
And many other people in China have experienced the same that we have. So we're all in one and we're unified in the same problem that we have.
So like, I would say part of my identity is definitely nationality. And ethnically speaking, I'm mostly Italian, I guess. So just to coincide. But I grew up in that country, in that social context. So I feel like that pertains a lot to who I am right now.
Okay, so do I relate more to my ethnicity or my nationality? Honestly, probably not much to either. I think I recognize that my worldview is somewhat filtered through both of those lenses. However, I don't feel any strong allegiance to my ethnicity. My nationality, I do appreciate certain aspects of American culture, American values. I'm probably more patriotic than nationalistic. I distinguish those two things. So nationality is probably a little bit more important to me.
Okay, so I think I identify most with my, although I am Mexican, all my family came from Mexico, in some way, they really brought their culture here, so I've kind of lived in that my whole life, so I would say I identify with that for the most part, but there's still a good part of me that does identify more with my nationality, so America and being American, because that's what I've grown up with. I've grown up in America, and I don't know, all my friends were American, how do I say, all my friends were not Mexican, so they weren't.
I'm actually a Malaysian passport holder, but I've lived in Singapore my entire life, and I'm actually ethnically Chinese. So for me, I mostly relate to my hometown, which is Singapore, and partly my ethnicity, which is Chinese. So I'm kind of I'm like Singaporean Chinese, and I hold nothing with the Malaysian passport.
So in regards to culture, I relate more to my ethnicity than my nationality, just because I feel like the way I grew up was very much so in like African American culture, where music, food, just everything was very much so about, I don't know, being African American, whereas I feel like American culture is very much strongly about patriotism, and I've just never really, I guess, learned or grew up knowing or being taught to be really proud of my nation, but more so just being proud of like my culture, my background, my heritage.
All right, my name is Ike. Ethically, I would say I'm Nigerian, full blood, from the Igbo tribe. Nationally, I'm American, but since I was born and raised in the U.S., I would say I relate more closely to African American, even though I am very ingrained in my Nigerian culture. But a trauma I would probably most definitely relate to is race in America, because people don't know I'm Nigerian until I tell them. So as far as other people are concerned, I'm African American. So I would just say growing up in Los Angeles, California, it's very diverse, but there still are, I guess, certain misconceptions or assumptions you can make. So just even growing up in the city of Gardena specifically, even walking in my own neighborhood, there would be like, I've had examples of like, say there's like an aged old woman in the neighborhood. If I walk by her house and she's watering her lawn, she might go inside and close her door until I pass by.
And actually a trauma that I didn't directly experience, but I was subject to, was when I witnessed my mom go through her sadnesses and grief as she tried to adjust to American culture, coming out of the Chinese culture. Mainly through reading her poems, I could see that there was a lot of pain that was engraved into the Chinese people due to its long history of having many tragic events. And through that, I could see that China has been a very, very unique but scarred culture, and that kind of gave me a sense of how important it is for me to act as a bridge in order to kind of aid and grow out of this trauma and for China to grow as a nation.
Those experiences relate to trauma. So everything from our relatives, they pass down all of those memories, and so we get to keep them and hold on to them and relate to them as well.
As far as like the trauma, I went through national service, and they've kind of like taught us like, oh, what's happened to Singapore in the past, which is like the Japanese occupation, and there was like a simulation where they did this Japanese prison camp experience. So we were like blindfolded, zip tied, tossed into the sea on the beach. It was a pretty painful experience because it was quite traumatic for myself too. But basically, like, I don't have that kind of I don't really relate to that kind of trauma in the sense that like, oh, it's like these people did our country wrong. It's more of like the nationalistic view that okay, so another country was able to do this to Singapore, and it's just something that we don't want to repeat again. So as far as like national trauma, no.
The second thing is trauma. Do I understand trauma more through my personal experiences or through stories that I heard growing up? And probably the former. I'd say, I had a number of family emergencies. I went through, there were family members who passed away, and in both of those situations, I think I was able to understand trauma at a more personal, visceral level, as opposed to understanding that, through people's stories of being in war or experiencing 9/11 or having some other experience that I have not personally experienced.
And definitely regarding traumas, I think some of the traumas that I had came from my grandparents' stories about living during the war and immediate aftermath, and other issues that came along in the 70s when Italy there was the terrorism period. Yeah, so I definitely lived those traumas through them, through their eyes, and through their opinions. And however, they affect my judgment, but just to an extent. And they did not fully define what I think of certain issues, historically speaking.
So those are kind of things I've experienced that have like kind of shaped where I am